because I'd want us to talk about SGBV, so sexual gender-based violence and femicide. Instead of getting better, things have escalated and gotten worse.
This is Kwambok science, okay? Relationships have become like a pyramid scheme, okay? The men bring money to the table, right? So the more money you have, the higher on the pyramid you are. You know anything about pyramid schemes? The guys at the top are the ones who enjoy. Everybody else, kwanzia tier 2, kuteremuka. Oh, fail.
You can't say that we're going to end GBV and we're going to end femicide by just punishing the people who are doing it. Yet the ones who are growing up are in an environment and culture is just morphing them to be more dangerous.
I still feel like women now, educationally and financially, we are a couple of steps ahead of men, but no one is going to talk about that. No one is ever going to talk about the woman who supported her husband and now they're building an empire together. No one is going to talk about the woman who started from the bottom. Men advanced her, tried to get her to sleep her way to the top, and she said no. They're always going to glorify these other ones, and then now that's the story. People pick and be like, yeah, that's why you guys are being killed.
It's not just that people don't understand what femicide is. I think we also don't understand, and I think it's intentional, in my opinion, that we don't understand how we are supposed to hold government or church to account. Hi everyone, welcome back for another episode of Circling the Rabbit Hole podcast with me, Dr. Claire Kinuthia. Today I have a fantastic lineup of guests for what is a very heavy conversation, but we're going to try and break it down into digestible components for us to be able to address what's happening in our country at the moment. First, before I dig into the episode, I'd like to say a big thank you to our location partner. That's Ashley Furniture Home Store and Fair Deal Furniture. Thank you so much for hosting us. Jumping in. Whenever we have, because you guys are familiar with us being a heavy conversation, taboo topics, controversial conversation type of podcast. But whenever we have more deep cutting convos, I struggle a little bit because there's a balance between I'm the host, but I'm also emotional about the topic. So I'll jump right in for my guests to introduce themselves as I compose myself before we jump into the convo. I don't know which end to start on. Carrie, you have
raised
been
right.
Gentleman
only
first.
gentleman, yeah.
Gentleman
Oh, okay.
first.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Kerry. Or at Mr. Kerry Martin on social media. I'm a part-time overthinker, full-time vibe curator, and I'm that friend that you didn't know you needed up until now. So until then, let's get to it.
Right.
I'm happy to be here.
Lovely.
So we're going professional.
I
don't even know how to follow that. Thank you for having me. My name is Joyce Minor, which is my camera, that one. My name is Joyce Minor, content creator, podcaster, full-time unhinged bestie, full-time weirdo, part-time hottie sometimes when I feel like it.
What? I'm hearing this intro, so I'm like, what the hell is going on? All right, this is my camera. All right, so I'm Sheila Kwamboka, aka Kwamboks. I am a broadcaster, seasoned broadcaster. I'm a podcaster, and I'm also a communicator. So what I do for a living is help people pass the point across, right? In different aspects.
Yeah.
So I'm really grateful to be here with my crew.
Gang.
And Doc. What's good?
The exciting thing about this episode is that we're doing a crossover.
Yeah.
So you haven't told us which podcast.
Yes, you guys
right.
asked we're from Boxport.
Okay, yes.
This one's distribution with their podcasters. I'm even
Podcasters,
worried.
I'm just here, podcaster.
I said
But yeah,
podcaster.
we are
sorry.
actually,
Vibe curator.
I'm a member of Boxpod.
Yes, we are
Yeah.
all a third of the Boxpod podcast.
Yes. Which if you're not already listening to, watching, I don't know where you live.
Yeah,
should
you
be.
got it.
Yeah.
You definitely
There's
should. Yeah,
that.
you definitely. Yeah.
So I'm happy that you guys have come on, and I can't wait to come meet your audience as well.
Yeah.
Because I will be doing an episode on
Yes.
Box Pods.
We
So
can't
that's
wait.
exciting.
I'm
Great.
sure they have so many
So many
questions for you.
questions.
So many.
Right. So jumping into our tough conversation, you guys went to protests last year because I'd want us to talk about SGBV, so sexual gender-based violence and femicide, and where we're at now, because it feels almost like instead of getting better, things have escalated and gotten worse. Because the stats we had last year, the whole year of reported cases of femicide, we are now at, by March this year, 129 reported cases of femicide, not intimate partner violence or gender-based violence. It's literally women killed by a partner, a close friend, close relative for being a woman, basically. And then, so that translates to a woman is being killed every 18 hours in Kenya, reported. And the stats are so grim, and yet we are making more noise than ever. Opinions, let me start there. Just broadly speaking, where are you at when you hear these numbers?
That is actually so scary. Like, we're not even making it a full 24 hours. You know, it was like, I think, one a day.
Yeah.
Now we're at 18
18
hours.
hours.
That I didn't
One
know.
every
That is
18
actually...
hours.
It's frightening because we all have small sisters. We all have cousins at some point. We all want to raise daughters. So hearing something like that is very frightening. Yeah.
Yeah. Carrie?
I second what Joyce said. Like, it's very scary and also pegs the question: how did we even get there? Yeah, it's quite scary because I've got a lot of phenomenal, influential women who have made me who I am, and it's scary to get to hear something like that.
Yeah.
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 I think when you see stats like every 18 hours, and it's interesting because I know Njeri Megwe has been on this podcast.
Yeah.
We were speaking last week and she shared this data, and I was like, and we're not even because this is a global thing. It's a global phenomenon.
Yeah.
It's you know, if you want to really look at it, you got to look at it from a universal perspective. And it's still not the worst case in the world,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
So they're real questions. I mean, we're not talking about just a phase. We're talking about something that is becoming sort of a part of our lifestyle. That the reality is, as a woman, you could die at any moment,
Like,
and
you're not guaranteed to get back home.
you know, and it's not, you're not putting, you know, malaria, you know, you can be hit by a hippo, you could have an accident,
Beaten by a
you could-
lion.
Yeah.
your
Like
heart
the
could
most-
just stop, but then there's
Yeah.
also someone can end your life, you know. So these are grim stats, and the fact that the numbers keep getting worse annually, I don't even think fear is the word. I think for me, what it puts us in, we are now at the action point where we must do
Something must be done.
to create, to buffer or to, you know, sort of sensitize people, because there are a myriad of issues that have led us to this situation that we're in. Yeah.
The pushback is, why are you guys talking about femicide and not murder? See, femicide is murder. We have a campaign trying to get Jerry started, trying to get signatures so that we can petition for femicide to be recognized in the law, because in Kenyan law it's not.
Yeah.
But everyone, there's a lot of pushback going, but murder is murder. And murder is illegal, and you'll get a jail term for that. So why are we pushing for femicide to be recognized? Becomes the next question. Why do you feel like it's more important to be specific?
You know, I'd maybe then position it from the flip side, which is, why are people, where is their pushback? Why would there be pushback? And it, you know, then now start to ask the questions of, if murder is bad, does it matter the manner in which it's done, right? Instead of having a conversation about this particular issue, why is this issue not important for most people? Then you look at their cultural issues, right?
Yeah.
Where there are people who think violence is discipline in a relationship. And so if you're trying to have a conversation with that person about a death that happened because of, you know, such occurrences, you're not going to get far. Right? And there are those ones who also think that, you know, being disciplined, forget the discipliner, being disciplined is part of romance or
Yeah.
relationships.
Like, this is how my husband or my partner shows me they love me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So by the time you break that stereotype and bring this person to the table to say, hey, let's address this issue, I mean, you have to, break through some of the stereotypes. Yeah.
And also, just to add on to like the cultural thing, and the reason why I'm calling it cultural is because I refuse to believe that this is how our ancestors behaved
here.
when it came to
Same
a
here.
woman being killed just for
Yeah.
being a woman. Because how many cases, by the time that woman dies, how many times has she gone to the police station and she's being told, you go and fix your marriage? Or like, you stop bringing us your domestic issues, go talk to your husband.
Yeah.
Or no one is going to listen to her because it's a domestic issue.
Yeah.
So of
Yeah.
course, that's my reason for why it needs to be made a crime. You can't, by the time she dies, someone she herself has probably reported it. Her
Yeah.
neighbors have reported it, but no one
probably
is
noticed.
listening
Yeah.
because you're being told, those are domestic issues, go fix it with your husband. This is how things work. They
Yeah.
don't, that's not normal.
Yeah.
That's not
At
normal.
all.
Yeah.
And I'd actually second that because I think a couple of weeks ago, we were with Jerry and Jerry Migui, and she actually spoke about how by the time it gets to somebody losing their life, it usually starts very small. It's the abuse starts verbally, emotionally, and it takes time before it gets there. So, as Joyce said, it's not something that is cultural, something that you'd say as Africans, that's how
That's the thing.
things are
That's the
supposed
part
to
I
be
don't
done.
understand.
I don't understand how that became a thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but that's actually and that's part of culture. Culture is not stagnant; it's dynamic, and this is something that has been inculcated in the society as normal, right? So if you have a scenario where a babe thinks that, oh, it's okay, there are communities where violence is not even. By the way, you can be. How many times have you heard the phrase, things that happen in between a sheet?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's none of your business.
People who cover themselves with the
And
same
I've,
duvet.
I've seen it firsthand.
Yeah.
I'm of the notion that when you hear two people getting into an argument, right, especially between a man and a woman, the reaction should be go and first stop the violence, right, or whatever physical, anything that's going down, try and de-escalate, right, and then, take it from there. So I remember I used to stay in an apartment somewhere here in Nairobi, and my neighbors, but I'm one of those neighbors who never likes,
Being in people's
standing
business.
out, right? But this particular incident, I could hear, the way you can hear an altercation. And so I went to the door and I'm like, because I know if you can be able to stop the altercation for a bit, it gives you a moment to think.
Yeah,
right?
even the ones who are fighting will
Do
be
you know
like,
the lady opened the door and she asked me what I'm doing there? She asked me, excuse me, can I help you? And you can tell it's like she had stopped an altercation.
like, why are you disturbing my...
Yeah.
So in that moment, I understand why someone would say, and that becomes the cultural aspect that we're talking about. We normalize that, when such and such a thing happens, it's okay. So in Nairobi, it can be maybe a bit frowned upon. But the moment you step outside Nairobi, what's happening in those vitongojis?
True.
Right?
True.
Where the neighbor is fighting and I say, nakuanga na visanga
hivyo.
zao, right?
Yeah,
Until someone
yeah.
dies and then say, unajua huyu anakujanga kama amekunywa alafu. So
Yeah.
we normalize this. On top of that, on top of having cultural issues, there's also the aspect of mental health, right? Which is not spoken about, right? I mean, we talk about it. At least now we talk about it. But when you have a situation, and I like to look at mental health like a disease, and we talk about, health all the time.
Yeah.
If someone's leg is broken,
True.
if your husband's leg is broken, someone will say, this man is sick, right? If he is having stress or other issues, it's not seen as a sickness.
Yeah.
And so by the time you're starting to see the results of that sickness or whatever is ailing this person, right? It is too late almost, right? And the person the partner in the house ends up being a victim to them.
Yeah.
And because they're trying to support an illness
Yeah.
by themselves. They
Yeah.
end up being a victim to it.
Yeah,
Right.
true.
So I feel like there's a myriad of issues of understanding first before we can say, I think we need to all be on the same page. And just before you get to your next question, I think we can all attest that when we were on the streets during Mandamano, we did meet men. This is the first Mandamano for
The femicide.
femicide.
Yeah.
They were men on the streets who are telling us,
And
"Kwani
we'll
nani
continue
akufangi?
to kill you.
Yeah.
Who
There's one
doesn't
said
die?
that.
Yeah.
We will continue to kill you."
Yeah.
Right?
That was
So
the attitude.
Yeah, and this man is being
Yeah.
asked, do you have a daughter? He's like, yes. I'm like, shame on you. You're actually saying this with a whole grown
Yeah.
man. We're not talking about a child.
Yeah.
A grown man.
Yeah.
That's his attitude towards
That's
femicide.
scary. That's so scary.
So
But
that's
again,
where we're at.
something you said, Carrie, is so important for, just to break it down. Like you said, abuse doesn't start physical. Because again, if it did, if somebody slapped you,
Yeah, you leave immediately. I mean,
what else are we discussing, right? But they have broken you down so much psychologically. By the time they're raising a hand to you, there's hardly any resistance. And then there's also fear, because they have weaponized your emotions against you. They've weaponized finances against you. So by the time they're actually physical, this partner is unable to walk away. And then we, watching a society, are going, but si anarudi, si alirudi, si alifukuza alichapwa juzi, akapelekwa hosi, and now we are back.
yeah, they don't know the
They don't
psychological
understand
warfare that's happened.
Yeah, because again, there's fear, and also there's dependency. I'm fully dependent on this person.
Yeah.
So I'm leaving, and then either I leave the kids in a horrible situation and they take the
Right,
abuse.
and you can't do that.
And I can't do that. Or I'm being held hostage by society. My parents have told me, this is my home. I have nowhere else to go.
We're rude too.
Rudi tu kwenu.
And then there's also, let's be honest. I mean, if you're not married here, you're a disappointment to your family. That's just what it is. Right?
That's a full
As long
Right
as you're
now,
married.
if you're going to your grandparent,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
and you maybe even if they can barely see,
Yeah.
and you tell them, meet my husband, it's like you've just said heaven.
Yeah, yeah.
So this institution called marriage is not something that you just walk away from,
Yeah.
and you've positioned someone their whole lives to be like, you are now a wife, you know. So there's a myriad of issues. By the time someone has said, I'm packing this bag to leave, you know, you can't judge them for not being able to get the strength to leave.
Yeah.
And it's a whole lot. Just to second what you just said, you said vumilia, like that. There's that whole if you want to leave an abusive marriage or relationship, there's those that would tell you, no, that's what marriage
That's
is
what
about.
marriage
It's
is about. Yeah,
persevering.
yeah.
You know, it's all about compromise.
Yeah.
You know, that's how we
he's
did
chapping
it.
you because
Yeah.
this is happening.
Yeah.
So it's drilled into your mental psyche to a point that you go on and you feel this is supposed to happen, of which it's not. And then on top of that, in Kenya, legally, it is quite a hassle for you to get out of marriage.
Yeah.
Even if
Oh.
the marriage is abusive,
Yeah, I
you have
remember
to
you
go
telling
to
us.
court
Yeah.
and
literally jump through hoops.
yeah,
In
like
fact,
go
if
through
they
the
made you
whole
jump through the same
procedure.
hoops to get married, probably wouldn't sign that.
You know what I
paper.
mean?
But
But
then
getting
after, when I'm
out-
trying to get out,
Yeah.
crazy.
Go on and explain. They ask for proof.
arbitration. Have you tried mediation?
Yeah.
To bring the elders, discuss. They're like, no,
That
we're
is
ready.
insane.
We're out.
And
And
Yeah.
even to some point, I had a lawyer who was telling me there's some instances in court where the court would rule and say, go back and figure out
Yeah.
how you'll work your marriage. We won't
Yeah.
give you divorce.
Yeah.
So it's a whole lot
crazy.
before you decide to
That
get
is
out of it.
Complete
wild.
madness.
Yeah.
Like
But, you know,
strangers are telling you, we've decided.
We've decided
Go and
for
figure
you.
it out.
Go and figure it out.
To that point of kuvumilia, it just got me thinking, right? Because there's something you mentioned that it's not African, right? I mean, the idea, I don't know whether we call it trauma bonding when your auntie's like,
Yeah, that's how we did
even
it.
as we were,
At
and
a
I'm
big-
like, sis, all is well.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
She's sharing with you, and I know, like, I usually say things and they sound like they're funny, but like, think of it in that moment. This person, you're telling them, I'm being beaten, I'm being hurt, somebody is dehumanizing me, and then they respond by saying, you're me too.
And for me, it's fine.
No,
so
for
even
real.
you should
Go
be
in
okay.
there, be easy. You got this.
Yeah.
One slap ain't it.
Yeah.
2 slaps is love.
Bado
A
hajakuonyesha
punch.
kisu.
Girl, do you have an eye?
Bruh.
Is your eye in the socket?
Did you die though?
Yeah.
You
what I
know,
mean?
Yeah.
so then it gets me asking myself, are things getting better? Right? Because I mean, if we're talking about cultural, norms, right? It means that there was room for such behavior, right? Maybe not as spoken about, but the fact that it means this auntie went to their mother and they were told, marriage ni kuvumilia. And their mother told them, marriage ni kuvumilia.
Yeah.
So has this been a cultural sort of norm that has been carried, remnants that
Yeah,
have
right.
been resuscitated? Because
Yeah.
it clearly seems like there was a time it was better, but now we're talking about it a lot.
Yeah.
And then another issue that would be a big problem with that exacerbates the situation is education, right? And access to resources, right? People think, and this is a big conversation right now. A lot of babes I know in informal settlements cannot go and get a job. Why? Because their man doesn't want them to go get a job because he wants to provide. He doesn't have a job, and because he can't be able to provide, he then hits her.
Yeah.
Are you seeing?
Becomes
Yeah.
her
Are you seeing
problem
the
now.
problem here?
And she's
Yeah.
trying to
I
help.
mean, I'm trying to
Yeah,
help Jonte.
you know
I'm
what I
going out
mean?
there to look for money,
Yeah.
but then Jonte resents you
Yeah.
for being the one that
Who can
is
provide.
providing,
Yes.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you see, these, and that's why I say this issue is not and this is the reason why there's GBV. It is a myriad of issues, and
Yeah.
if we don't address them, the education part of it. When we were talking about girl child, right? When you do the research and see how babes galvanized around coming together to empower the girl child,
Yeah.
right? And it was encouraged. And the part of encouraging is the part that we don't really put into context. You know, if today Gava says, like we're talking about ending GBV, and we say it's a crime,
Femicide.
femicide is a crime,
Yeah.
right? What that means is that we're going to see more cases. There will be actual action around this.
Yeah.
When Gava says we're going to support girl child, right? All resources, NGOs, blah, 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 goes to this particular issue.
Yeah.
And so the boy child was pretty much left behind.
Yeah.
And you're seated in an office, or you're trying to date someone your own age, and it's not in a bad way.
Yeah.
Lazima jipe miaka ka 8.
No, like for real.
You know?
Yeah.
And this is a terrible pyramid situation. We're going to talk about
Yeah.
it. That has been created, and not by me, but I will be a victim to
Yes.
it.
True.
Yes.
Either I will not be, either I'll have to sit out because
Yeah.
I don't want to upset Jonte,
Yeah.
right? Or this man that we're dating.
Yeah.
I don't want to upset him because he doesn't have, right? And so a mix of issues.
Yeah.
True. True.
You bring that up, and I remember something you guys already discussed on Boxpod because I'm a big fan. And the conversation around cultural normalization of the money. I need, as a guy, I need money to get the babe.
Right.
And as the babe, if he doesn't have money, in fact, I'm not even interested in him. I'm
Cancelled.
interested in his father.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
That's where my
By the
eyes
way,
are. Right?
Like, it's so ridiculous, but
generation
it's
higher.
true.
Right?
Yeah.
No, truly, that's exactly what is part of the contributing factors, I feel like, is, and I bring this up because of the recent CS anti-vibes. You've said anti, and that's who came to mind. The gender CS speaking with chest. That women are being killed because they're going to Airbnbs looking for money.
Yeah.
Their whole chest. A whole grown up.
A whole woman.
A whole woman.
And when you listen to something like that, you go like, okay, is this the culture? Because we keep saying culturally, like
Yeah.
it's prehistoric, dinosaur age. Is this the culture we are living in now? And are these the issues we should be now focusing? Forget traditional times where I remember a very respectful culture around the women.
Exactly.
Everyone supported the women because they took care of the home.
Exactly.
And now we seem to have picked some aspects. I want you in the house cooking and cleaning for me.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't want to go provide, like we've said. But if you bring money, suddenly you're the man of the house and I can't respect you, so I must beat you down. Are we the ones building a new culture? Have we? Because again, like you said, it's globally. It's not necessarily just a Kenyan issue.
Yeah.
And so much so that the US seems to now, under the new administration, trying to put women back in their place.
Yeah, back in
It's
the
truly like at a
traditional.
wives.
Yeah.
we are at a presidential campaign level of trad wives.
Yeah,
Let's
true.
re-establish having children and being in the home and
Yeah,
raising them.
the order.
What's going on?
Do you know, when I look at that situation of, and it's a very great question that you asked. Prior to speaking to Njeri Megwe, I was very annoyed at that woman. Extremely.
Which woman?
So much so I went on air and I blasted her.
Who is
The
this?
CS.
Oh, the
CS.
CS.
Yes.
Right,
Oh,
right,
okay.
yeah.
She's currently actually the CS for gender.
Yeah.
And that was because I was looking at it from the perspective of, is she wrong? Hell yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely crazy, right? But then, and that doesn't take away from the fact that what she said was nonsense, right? Very ill prepared, which even begs the question, how did she get the job? But then we're in Kenya, politics, blah, 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 right? But then it got me thinking, is this how the people think, right? When we were on the streets for the protest, I couldn't understand how not everyone is on the street,
Yeah.
right? How is everyone not offended and on the streets
this,
saying,
yeah.
yes, tomorrow we will protest other murders or other things that are going on in the nation, but today we are protesting this and we are here, all of us, because we are mothers, sisters, blah, blah, blah. But it's not that easy. And all these things that we've mentioned play a huge part. And that's why GBV ends up being such and femicide ends up being a very complex issue. Because it's not a men stop killing women. It is not that easy. It is, why are we here? And the gender CS, when I spoke with Njeri, she said after the heat that she received, she reached out and she had to ask herself, clearly there's something I'm not understanding about this issue. And that for me was right? If we take this issue and just look at it like, how dare you not know? We are never going to get anywhere. We need to start communicating. Everybody needs to be on the same page to understand why this is a problem. Because if you're seated with people who, even and it doesn't matter, it's not a gender thing. It's not a babes, men understand better. I feel like if it was somebody else on that microphone, they would have. In fact, if you take a microphone and you go around the nation, even in Tao, just asking people about GBV and femicide, I feel like the answers you get will shock you. From educated people, from men, from women. Why? Because everybody looks at it from a very small lens of men nowadays are very, oh, babes
Very
love money,
generalized,
right? You generalize it rather than looking at the actual issues. And if you really want to understand that this issue is ununderstood, the president gave 100 million. When things hit the fan, there was a time things hit the fan. He said, can you 100 million and then he sort to your femicide. And we moved on.
But the only thing he ever said about femicide.
He doesn't see it as
An
there
issue.
needs to be first, where do we start legally? Number two,
Conversations.
what are the procedures, structures I should put in place? Throw money at it, go and buy lesos. Kalisha wa mama chini kwa
make some
manini.
chapati somewhere.
Oe, mama oe.
Yeah.
Usichapwe. Usikubali
Sikubali.
Because and I know it sounds ridiculous, but there are some
That's how they
counties.
view it,
There are some governors, if you sit down with them right now and you say, hey, let's put a budget aside. How much money do you have? 5 billion. Let's put 1 billion aside for this very important issue.
They're
They
like,
look at you
what
like-
issue?
What's the issue?
How many women a day? 100 and nini since March. Jenga hospitali, my friend. You get
Not
put
even
classrooms.
related
How
to
can I be able
anything
to
to
put
do?
my name on NGBV?
Yeah,
It
you know what
doesn't-
I mean?
How will I
But
get
yeah, more
votes?
bus
So
stops.
it's a really intense issue, right? So yeah.
I think my view on this is the era of the internet has just escalated things because I feel like it's a culture that is being glorified. But if you actually, we even sat down with a Gen Z once, we never got to air that episode, but we sat down with a Gen Z and we told her all our stereotypes. She's like, no, that's not all Gen Zs. That's just the stories that are put out there. You know, the whole thing of like bad news travels faster. If you look at the statistics, the number of women who are graduating, starting businesses, who have their own, who are doing, there are a lot of women who are out there doing their own thing, but the ones who are being ousted are the ones who like money. That's not the whole percentage. It's actually, if you look at it, it's a very small
small,
percentage.
actually. Yeah.
But because of the era of the internet, that is what is being glorified. Because let's be honest, even in eras of our mothers, my mom knew a proper gold digger.
Yeah.
Like a
Same
proper,
here.
those ones used to go after married men, all used to go after men who had money. And she wasn't the only one in her time.
Yeah.
It's just that there was no internet to glorify that kind of culture.
Yeah.
Because I still feel like women now, educationally and financially, we are a couple of steps ahead of men, but no one is going to talk about that. No one is ever going to talk about the woman who supported her husband and now they're building an empire together. No one is going to talk about the woman who started from the bottom. Men advanced her, tried to get her to sleep her way to the top, and she said no. They're always going to glorify these other ones, and then now that's the story. People pick and be like, yeah, that's why you guys are being killed.
Right.
You know,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
my view on it.
Yeah.
And speaking on culture, like it's most of them are subtle. You might not even see it. Like on social media, you see people glorifying the soft life. This is how you get the soft life. You see it in movies, you see it in music, and like there's quotable lyrics that people will go on and say, broke boys don't deserve no kitty. As in, so like those subtle things all over the place would drive the masses to start thinking that way, that it's all about that, of which it isn't.
Yeah. And that actually drives to the point of women being commodified, right?
Yeah.
For me, when I look at relationships today, right? First, to the viewers, usizoe kuwa single. It's addictive.
Like you're speaking to us
Never
directly.
leave.
Honestly.
But when I shout, don't go through the
Don't go
corner.
Eh.
Because you now start looking at relationships so do I want problems?
Problems.
Always.
I just want peace, you know? So, and why? Because relationships have become very transactional, extremely.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, me have so mad, and this is Kwambok science, okay? Relationships have become like a pyramid scheme, okay? So, what do I mean? The men bring money to the table, right? So the more money you have, the higher on the pyramid you are. You know anything about pyramid schemes?
Yeah.
The guys at the top are the ones who enjoy. Everybody else, kwanzia tier 2, kuteremuka. Oh,
Fail.
problem. So the guys at the top, they exacerbate the situation. Why? They have access to all sorts of money. Elon Musk can come here and beba us all plus the podcast and you guys here chilling, right? And guys, I'm telling you, we
Plus
have
actually
morals, Baru.
We do, but alas, there's a dollar amount
Do you
where
know
your
he can give us
morals
each a
jump
billion like
Yeah,
this
bruh.
and feel nothing.
Nothing.
Still. He can buy Kenya.
For real.
just
us.
as
No,
for
for real.
yeah, for vibes,
Right?
just
You're like, you have a country, I got you,
He
babes.
can literally take us to
Let
the
me
moon
get you that
for
country.
lunch.
for lunch.
Okay.
Bring you back.
Money long.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So these guys, they exacerbate the situation because they become sort of the reference point.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody now aspires to be like that guy. So even Jonte, when he gets his 20K at the hustle, the first thing he thinks about is taking Stacey to Coast. SGR.
Yeah.
Why? Because those people at the
That's what
top
you're
have
supposed to
created a
do.
standard,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now, where do babes play in this? What do babes bring to the table? You are the prize. You are the commodity,
Yeah.
right? And we have accepted that role.
We've
And
accepted
the problem
fully.
of that is just like the pyramid scheme. There are babes who are at the top, and then with the bad behavior and whatever, they can get away with anything.
Yeah.
I can date this one and then I can break up and I can
Yes.
treat this man like nothing and I can get away with it. But then your actions up the top, the consequences will be felt at the bottom,
Yeah.
right? Because the girls at the bottom are not commodifying themselves. They don't even have the resources to commodify.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
Now she's sleeping with a guy for pads.
Man.
You understand? So
Actually, wow.
you, this one at the top is sleeping for leisure.
Yeah. Right
She,
now.
For the soft life.
Nili
Yeah.
Vagina is propelling her around the world.
For
This is a
fun
private jet right
times.
here.
Such can
Memes,
write for us,
right?
Nigod, on the status.
Good.
But the guy
Manifesting.
and give
No,
us
manifesting.
financial advice
Yeah.
instead of starting with the actual origin.
Yeah. Be
So
honest.
the girls at the bottom
Yeah.
aspire. So let's talk about where now real love crosses in this pyramid. If we're talking about love and commodity, at the center, when you meet real love, like if a young girl meets a guy who's actually showing her real love, and we get it all the time. There are men, they'll tell you, this neighbor of mine, maze tunapendana, we're attracted to each other, but because I have money, I have nothing for her. So the only thing she gives me is strokes, and then she goes to her rich mubaba, right? And mubaba is just a guy who lives in the estate next to the slum where they live.
For real,
It's
across
not
the
a
tracks.
So it's a pyramid scheme. The only people that benefit are at the top. The bottom, we're left with this mess where men think, oh, babes only love money. And it's like, sir, it's not all of us. But then he's seen, he's had, and what he's experienced. He's going to treat all of us like we are the nini. Even when you're just like, I was thinking, he's already left. Because he thinks I'm about to ask him for money. Right? So, and then when he works hard and does get the money, he has options now. Now he's not operating from a point of love. Okay? Because he's been turned into a bad boy. An 18-year-old boy, 20-year-old boy who's ready to start reproducing, right? He's ready to settle down, have because to be a family man is not about money. It is about stepping up. Right? So he's ready to step up and build a future with a girl. But he has to give himself 10 years before he can even get the actual one he wants. And so the moment he gets the money, you're dealing with a very
different person.
Taliban. So these are the problems that we've created. And the way I look at romance in the setting that it is, it exacerbates the problem.
Actually, I like that approach because thinking about it as a pyramid scheme, the Airbnb context comes into play as trickle down. Because I can live the lifestyle and I'll show you guys, and I run the narrative when you're at the top, either the money or the commodity. I run the narrative. You who's looking at me and aspiring, your translation is, okay, I've been invited to the Airbnb, let me go.
This is what you're supposed
assuming that reflects money, assuming that because I've seen it like this, and that's so that misinterpretation as we try and navigate down here, the rest of us, the watus, as we're trying to navigate.
The watus.
Like you said, the guy gets small coins, loses his mind. The girl commodifies to the point where now even access, because again, I saw something that triggered me online where the pretty girls get the least interest or attention, but everybody assumes most
that
of the people
get
are talking
all of
to you.
Because they've been commodified beyond words.
Yeah.
I live in the same world with Kim Kardashian. I live in the same world with people who have decided, hotness is not what God gave me. My nipples are
I can
not
buy
sufficient.
it.
I need to get somebody
Can go
to
buy it.
Can go and buy. Yeah.
now.
Inject that
Okay,
thing.
and then ask, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? Someone will say, I'm doing it for me. Girl, I never see my titties. Once I get dressed, I never even think about them. Like, Joyce, have you ever looked down like this and said,
I'm like, thank you,
Yeah,
Lord. Thank you, Jesus.
you're doing it because there's a person who has
titties
a
alone.
degree somewhere and he's decided to meet up with an influencer, and now they're selling you titties en masse. Guys, have you ever seen the injections that guys put on their nyash?
Crazy.
I've seen them.
They actually don't
disease is
look
that?
normal.
Like, but it's because I've been commodified. So think of, let's think of it at a bit of a higher level. If you look at places like Italy, Europe, and you're just like, where did all the natural faces go to?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, you're just like, and why am I
literally
making
where
myself
the-
like that? Why am I making myself like that? So that I can be able to pull a richer,
Yeah.
if I was doing it for John Temaze, I'd be showing up like, I'm just Tomoka the Shah, shaking everything off, and I'm like, what's going on?
And the fact
Right?
it's actually been like brainwashed and indoctrinated for it to like look normal or like for you to think that's normal. I'm like, you don't actually look like a human being right now, but to them you can't convince them otherwise.
the thing.
That's the
That's
standard
the
of
thing.
beauty.
Yeah.
I'm like, you look like an alien fish, but they don't see
But they
that. In
don't see
fact, the
that.
bigger the better. I'm like, stop.
There's no space
Like, that's
on your
enough,
face
you know?
anymore, right?
Thank you. Then it gets worse. While that is happening, as we are there modifying ourselves, you're wondering, okay, to whose standard? Who's setting the standard? Enter porn,
Also.
right?
Yeah.
And now, I'm not talking about a tea. Okay, I don't know whether there's levels to this, but like, there's levels to this.
Did you have to say it
There's
like that?
levels to this. This is not even a joke, guys.
Yeah.
Every single time, I love watching true crime simply because I'm very curious about to understand. I've always been
What
curious
would
about
lead you
murder,
there?
Yeah.
right? So I always try to understand what would lead someone, because murderers are not at TCG.
Just
Ati yenyewe
chilling.
alikuwa na macho za umada. No, there's nothing like that. It's just your neighbor, Joyce, you know? And you're just like, and everybody's like, we never even imagined,
could have
right?
imagined that
Nobody
this
ever. They
person-
have moms, they have uncles, sisters, cousins, friends,
Yeah.
right? When I watched these stories for GBV, the thing that they were watching before paints a picture, right? Violent, graphic, pornographic content. Violent, pornographic content. If you do your research around the world, there's been a spike in such sites, right? Where violent pornographic, which means there's some aspect of violence mixed with pornography.
The sexual act.
When you look at wars or any civil breakouts that happen, sexual violence is used as a tool, right? So is sexual violence being used as a tool to be able to empower somebody who feels not empowered, right? And when you watch these stories of especially places where there's been, and by the way, the guys for GBV or femicide, they are repeat offenders.
In fact, several
Facts.
stories.
And probably
even-
they've been called out.
Yeah,
Not
even
probably, for
homegrown,
sure they've
some
been called
have
out.
been taken to jail, released early, killed again.
Right?
Yeah.
So
Or
they
raped
start
again
with
or whatever.
neighbor,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and all this violence is leading from their hate for one particular human being, one particular woman, right? It could be a neighbor, it could be, and it leads to a whole lot of things. They're watching this kind of content. So if we're being honest, like if these videos that we are watching or these videos that are being put out and people think that it's normal, it's altering minds. So you're seated there with that accountant in your office and you're thinking, we are just, he was the Mpole guy. This content he's watching is changing who he is. And so he decides to go and experiment. And that's how we end up. Do you remember the case of that babe who, guess said it was a Nigerian, but it was some Kisi guy
What?
who had taken a babe to an Airbnb.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that story?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Sexual violence, right? So there's a myriad of issues. And I feel like unless we actually get like a task force that is looking at the scientific, cultural, economic impact, right, of this issue, next year, a time like this, we'll be talking about 8 hours, every 8 hours.
For real.
Because again, there are countries that's that statistic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
It's yeah.
Every
That-
8 hours, like
Literally.
our working hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or even less.
Or even less. Because again, if you look at the stats in SA, and they're crazy.
Yeah.
You listen to the statistics and you're like, how did you get that? Like, you're not safe.
That's
At
so-
home or outside of home, you're just not safe.
Yeah, because I've been seeing a lot of South African girls talking about like, how to stay safe in an Uber.
I mean,
Oh, I made
you
it
saw the
home
story
after
of she
taking
went
an
to pick
Uber.
up her parcel in the post office
Post
and was
office.
murdered by one of the attendants.
Post office.
Post office. She went to pick up her parcel. You know how you order things
Yeah, yeah,
online.
yeah.
Goes to pick it up. The guy tells her, "No, come back after this time. I'll need Siri who has the key where." Locks up. Everybody goes home. He locks her in and attacks her.
Yeah,
And
but these
disappears
things,
her body.
these things happen. If you look at the cases in Kenya, and why I'm telling you that, unless we look at it in a multi-thronged issue,
Yeah.
it's going to reach a place where Kenyans are going to pour on the streets
Yeah.
to say enough is enough, right? And I worry that it's going to be a bit too late when there'll be so many murders, because if you look, there was a case here in Nairobi, in Kenya, in Embu, I think, a girl who worked in a church compound. You saw that story.
I was telling my parents about that one. I even sent it to them. It's on YouTube now.
Yeah. She was your colleague. You're working with somebody in a church compound, and he's watching you. He has his wife. He's a young guy, and you guys are just talking, and you don't know that this guy akona mahanjam na wewe. Yeah. And then he just decides, F it. Enough is enough.
Today is the day.
Today is the day. And he corners you, and he rapes you, and he kills you, and he throws you in a toilet. Right? And then helps the people to look for you.
To look for you. In fact, took photos on that day
Wow.
with his friends.
With your phone.
With her phone.
Like he's with you in the house.
I think there's a reason why my algorithm doesn't show me these stories,
Yeah.
because
But you
Yeah.
see, if you look at this, the thinking behind the boy, or why he's, he saw someone, and then what happened? What did his mind tell him? Right? What if you do that when they come to do investigations? Do they research the content on this person's phone?
Yeah.
Right? Do they look at what kind of conversations this person was having before, or is it just like tumempata mwili ndio hii ni murder case? And most of the cases end up in court either mistrial, right? Because they marked it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I like to look at these things and be very I want to say solution oriented. I'm like, what happened to lead to this, and what can we do to rectify the situation? And there's this therapist. Have you guys watched Adolescence?
Yes.
Yeah. And she was talking about these incels, or this growing community of
The
like
red pill
incel, the
content.
red pill
Yeah.
community. She was like, they can't be fixed by therapy. Because remember the scene where the therapist came to talk to the young boy and he started yelling at her. Like the
Literally trying
therapist
to
was
dominate
scared
her.
of
Yeah.
a 13-year-old.
Yeah.
And then it ended up being him being this one. So, I hope you like me. You know, she was trying to explain those kind of men, therapy of talking, it's not going to help them. It's the men around them who need to take accountability for such men. Because there's also another comedian who said it. By the time you've had your friend has raped someone, you saw it.
You knew.
There are several times you saw your boy do something and you said nothing. So it has to be now society to now start, because men seek approval from other men, not from women. So as men, you need to start calling each other out and be like, hey, if this is how you talk to women, you can't hang out with us. If you don't pay your child support and you're going to be a deadbeat dad, you can't hang out with us. Because it can't be now up to the same women who are being victims to be the ones to help you out of the situation. So as men, and I believe that will honestly work, because they seek approval with each other. It has to be the guys around them. Most of these guys are not surprised when they hear their boy. Even that guy for the church, if you ask his friends, they'll be like, he had some very fishy behaviors around women. They knew it, they saw it, but they didn't say anything. They were like, nakwanga tu hivyo. Oh, that's how. You need to start calling each other and start cancelling each other. If you want to be part of this community, behave like a decent man.
But then
And
there's
there's
also another story that such men also isolate.
Yeah.
Okay? Part of the problem we were talking about, men don't have a place to open up, right? So I was reading, there's a doctor, I've forgotten his name. I'll share with you so that you can put the link, right? So he was talking about, he's running this campaign for helping men speak up, right? And he was talking about part of when you isolate, when you are in that, you can't open up, you isolate. And so in that space of isolation is where whatever else takes over. And so, yes, you can't be able to see your man friend if you're hanging out, but most of the time, the ones who are ending up with these sort of, like these cases where it's a bit far removed, it's not like a family, maybe it's a colleague, and then there are repeat offenders, like you pata, there's like 6 other bodies somewhere, they were isolating. Hakuna mtu anajua story zake. Huyu anakuanga tu mpole. And then anafanya tu kazi yake, anaenda there. Question. So I like what you've said about men have to be each other's keeper. Those boys that you spoke about in adolescent. About 8 years ago, I was in Nigeria in a place called Wari. And it's it's in the Delta, very energetic people, I love Nigerians. But then I remember interacting with the kids, and I've always talked about how very hectic they were. Cars are passing, they're like, hey, give us money, like chokoras. But then a bit over aggressive. Like this 7-year-old is like, God damn.
You're 7.
There's this City of Gods from Brazil. You watched the movie. Those kids who rob people. That. Like they're so aggressive. I remember some of the moms were like, oh, I think you should start a program here to help us with these boys. And I remember I brushed it off until I understood incels. And I was like, you see, when there's no strong male figure in that you look up to, it's not going to be a woman.
Honestly,
it's not going to be a woman. So there's need for that.
There's a whole lot of truth in that, and yes, men need to be more accountable to each other, because one thing about men, and there's guys behind the cameras, you might not be able to see them, but I'm so sure they would agree. It's not quite common to find a group of men who would be there to build themselves, build each other, rather, apart from just linking up for bashes, for a road trip, for a weekend, for just to have fun, because there's a whole lot of, like, the way the culture is right now. You see the way women have been commodified, and you're judged by how attractive you are. For men, you're judged by how much money you have. So the only thing that most guys out there, even the young ones, the ones in university, would go on and tell you that what they want to do if they can't get a girlfriend is right now I'm going to focus, I get money, and then after I get my money, that's when I'll start getting babes. And by the time you get there, you're not in a healthy environment of men who would tell you how you're supposed to relate to women. So by the time you get to that point, you've made money, you don't know how to relate to women because you're upbringing your whole teenage or late teen years in your 20s.
As well. You're all thinking the same way.
So you've got people who are thinking like that. So a lot of it needs to change because you can't say that we're going to end GBV and we're going to end femicide by just punishing the people who are doing it. Yet the ones who are growing up are in an environment and culture is just morphing them to be more dangerous. So it's a whole lot, something that needs to be nipped in the bud. And you start it like how Kwambok said, check these people's phones, check their habits, and
learn from each case. Make everyone who you arrest a case study.
And how Joyce was saying, like, you need to now start from the small behaviors before it even gets to someone being emotionally abusive or physically abusive. It just starts by how they not talk directly to a woman, but talk about women when they're with their fellow men.
And now, when you look at all these things that we talked about, now, let's say I have the courage, I have broken out of I have seen the truth about this Jonte, and I've said, you know what? I'm going to the cops, right? Or I'm getting out of this. Okay, let's say now I've decided I want to get out of the scenario, right? First, when I go to the police, they are first asking me, sasa madam, unatuletea shida za marriage yako hapa? Si mwende muongee na mzee. Like, first they're trivializing the matter. So, especially when it comes to something as sensitive as femicide. And I know that, yes, there's a GBV desk in some stations, but how effective they are also speaks to understanding the issue.
Yes, that's true.
It speaks to the country understanding the issue and the tone that they've taken with it. And then that's the one aspect. Then there is the way the court systems go, right? So, yes, I've gone, I've shtakid you. Chances are, see, you're my husband, you're my boyfriend, we live in the same environment, right? We come from the same village. So after we finish to the shtaking, where are we going?
The same place. Go
back.
back.
So I'm still seeing you every day with all the things that you did. And now, what do they say about an abuser, right? Once they've done the deed and you've decided to separate, you are now in the most danger that you have ever been. And that's where most of the murders happen.
Yes. True.
Right?
When you've decided to leave, that you're
so
the
then
most
we say,
vulnerable.
People like Njeri who are doing usikimye, right? Where are they? Why this is to speak on just how the issue gets exacerbated. Yes, we know the issues. Yes, the victims are starting to understand that this is wrong, right? Yes, they want to leave. Where are they going?
Where are they going? How are they leaving?
I have 3 kids. I have a husband, right? I don't have enough resources. I need to get away from this man who's going to kill me, right? I've gone Avshtaki to the police station. And then where are the safe houses? Right? Where are the resources for the safe houses? And guys, I've done my research. Even in first world countries, the safe houses are not enough. And so your best bet is just to stick it out there. And that's why people. So when you see a gender CS nominee
saying such things,
going on a microphone in front of the whole nation and saying, nani exam? Tuseme ni end of sem, right?
And she's there to
Final
impress.
exam.
Umekuja kufanya exam
Final
kama student. Invigilator amesema 50 minutes. First question. Why? See, they're sleeping around. 0. You should go home. But this is Kenya, we actually appoint you.
That's the thing.
And I think it's very important to ask such questions so that everyone can look at different parts and see the part that they can play. Because again, this is something that has been happening for decades. We're not going to fix it overnight. Obviously, I wish we could. But that's why I feel it's important to have this kind of conversations, because now someone will start looking at like, what can I do to help women who want to leave these situations? What can I do as a guy to talk to my friend who I know has been behaving differently? Because society created the problem, society has to be the one to fix it. So I feel like everyone needs to play their part, and that's why it's important to ask these questions so that everyone can be like, I can focus on this part of the solution, I can focus on this, I can focus on this, and together we can nip it in the bud. I honestly believe we can. It'll take time, but I think we can.
My biggest question, where is the church in all this? Where are the religious institutions? I mean, I saw
People
one
who are
church
throwing
that
people
collected
out.
billions, right? In billions from
The church-
Sadaka.
The church is telling people to go back and work on their marriage.
Yeah.
Go
I
back
saw, I won't mention the church, we all know, collected billions in revenue from
No, we saw it. It
From
was going around.
Sadaka, right? And this is an annual thing and it's getting better and better. Billions. Right?
Yeah.
Show me one safe house.
Yeah.
Show me one activity you have put in place to ensure that the couples in your church are adhering. Because let's be honest,
Yeah.
we are a sample of the society. Those GBV guys, they are in your church there, they're seated with you. The pastor,
And
he's
that's
the
at the
guy.
front.
They're the biggest contributor.
Yeah.
Those
Mind you,
billions
these
of yours.
institutions are empty Monday to Saturday.
Yeah.
They're just sitting.
Yeah,
Empty.
and they have the resources to be able to put things like this together. But then it speaks on how we understand the issue of femicide, right? And why it is a complex issue too. Because if Kenya is a religious country, right? If we can be able to reach political messages,
Honestly,
right?
seems to be like the only
Where
messages that can.
where our leaders,
Yeah.
if you have 20 million to take to a church do you know how many safe houses you'd have built
Would have
if
built
this was an actual
and
issue,
supported. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's not an issue because people don't see it as such.
Yeah.
So for me, what I want the takeaway from this conversation to be is that everybody has a part to play in educating the next person with love.
Yeah.
Right? Because I've been that person. I don't even have time for this nonsense. I'm just like, what do you mean? This, no. But then when you understand the nuances of the issue, yes, first, we do not condone at all. There's no excuse, there's no story, there's nothing.
Yeah.
But then you gotta reason with people so that you pass the message across. Otherwise, we'll sit here, we'll just be like, because even if we say every hour a woman is killed, will that affect a man or a woman to understand, to say, enyewe hiyo ni mbaya, that 24 hours is not?
Yeah.
One lady per hour is when you be like,
is when
"Enyewe
that's
hiyo
key.
ni-
That's the
hiyo,
max. Wow.
24 kwa siku.
Wow.
Jesus, hiyo ni
Wow.
mob.
A whole
One,
day.
hiyo at least one haijafika mbali.
Yeah.
You get me? So
Exactly,
it's
yeah.
not about the number of deaths. It's not
Yeah.
about the frequency.
Yeah.
It's about what do the people understand this issue? You know, you could be speaking English and people are understanding French. Yeah.
Yeah. I like that point. I want to add on to that. It's not just that people don't understand what femicide is. I think we also don't understand, and I think it's intentional, in my opinion, that we don't understand how we are supposed to hold government or church to account. We assume that because I am being told, head down, this leader tells me how to run like this, and this is what the church is supposed to do. So they dictate how I live my life,
Right.
but I don't have a feedback loop on what I want to see from my church, what services I need from my politician.
Right.
It's more of, I'm helpless. Now let's wait for the next election cycle. And that's
Right.
when we will show our muscle.
Yeah.
As opposed to, like, for example, the petition. People truly don't understand that by signing a piece of paper, I can action my government to
Right.
create law.
Facts.
We don't understand that by standing in an office together with whoever my representative is at my level, I can hold them to account. Because I still sit in my space and ask, what the heck is a woman rep? Women's rep? What is that?
What are you doing?
So what are you doing? But then when you think about it, that's an office that is a very powerful office if we knew how to use it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But the aim with power and control is uneducate people, literally shut down education so that we don't understand the muscle that we hold as an electorate, as a voter, as an individual who goes to this church. If my church has no one to hold to account, of course the pastor will drive a Prado. In fact, he'll own a jet because what
And
else
you're
is
the
he
one
doing
who
with the
helped him
money?
buy it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You've given them the money, but you are not telling them we need a youth center. Because our youth have nowhere to, meet and have conversations around their bodies, around, whoever, who
Sexual
they
education, all that.
are, enterprises and becoming, building their own lives. We don't have a space for that. Give us that space. We need a women's shelter. We need education coming to the homestead.
Yeah.
So we have been made almost helpless, so that I'm sitting just saying, yani my church, gosh, they're driving bigger cars. In fact, let me say it the way I've heard it said.
Yeah.
We built for the pastor a house last year.
Hiya.
Have you guys seen? Hey, you guys were so proud. Now we have 3 cars in that church.
Guys,
That's how we say
But
it.
guys, I
That's how
told
we
you,
say it.
When we
That's
finish with femicide, we should deal with mental health issues because they present in different ways.
It's crazy.
No,
There's
what
a sense
is
of
that?
immense pride. You guys, we built this church from scratch. And I'm like, and your house.
Yeah. And
No,
also,
we honestly
Your
like our housey will come and omba money to take to the
Yes,
church
yeah.
to build a hospital, and if she is literally dying
You still-
outside that
yes,
hospital,
yes.
they won't
You're
take
still
her.
the
Yeah.
one who will have
They
to pay
won't
for
take
her
her.
medical
They will
expenses.
literally,
Yeah.
even though you are dying,
Yes. Yeah.
and you're the one who helped, unaenda kuomba pesa ndo upeleke kanisa to
Even
build
if you're
a
the one who built it
hospital.
with your stones yourself.
Like your intestines could be
access.
coming outside of your body and they will not admit you, and you're the one who gave
Mara,
them
that's
money.
that.
Yeah.
Baby, do you know
Yeah.
what I think about it is I think because like I said, I'm looking at this from a very optimistic lens, right? I think the church has had enough time of PR, right? And that's what it is. Think of it from a
Enough
logical
time.
perspective. Kenyans are not behaving like this towards religious institutions because, or their devotion, because the PR wasn't done well, it's been done well. And that's not any disrespect to anybody. That's
Yeah.
just
That's
the
not even
lingo,
PR, that's
right? They've
indoctrination.
had enough time to be able to make you understand the importance of doing what you're doing,
yeah.
right? And for this particular issue, you know, I think Kenyans sit back and assume that the government should understand. But if you understand the issues, then that's why it's important for you to be a part of this conversation.
Yeah.
And I like what Jerry is doing with using the law, right? Because petitioning without legal, going to the streets protesting
Exactly.
without actually having like legal
So
sort
actionable
of
steps towards
exactly,
changing
you know,
the law. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
that's where the change begins. Because
Yeah.
if we put it into law and we say we criminalize, ukiua mwanamke femicide, unaenda ndani, si ati unaenda kujitetea. So unajua aliingia, alikuja
Domains,
kisu,
man,
sijui,
domains.
no,
Yeah.
ndani one
Yeah.
time. You don't go and start. You know, let me help people understand. Robbery with violence. Guys, if you walk in this shop today, right? And let's say, let's imagine you are thinking of stealing. Things ziko mbaya nyumbani sana, mgonjwa, you need 500 bob or
Yeah.
1,000.
Yeah.
And you walked into this store because you know the cashier is there. And we nipatie hizo vitu zenye uko nazo hapo, and did you're holding something here, even if there was nothing. Right? The intent of the violence moves it from just being stealing to now we don't even care. Ati unajua, robbery with violence.
Yeah.
This is this kind of
Immediately.
crime, right?
Immediately.
In Kenya, until we get it to that place, right? And that's what we're calling for, criminalizing it, that you need to really think about, even avegi, sai when they're thinking about going to rob, they know usibebe kitu yenye itatuletea. Ni afadhali tukue na ya stealing, lakini sikue stealing.
Isikue violence,
Yeah.
no.
The law
Yeah.
deters.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
but it's not the only thing that we're putting in place.
Yeah.
There's also the communication. We need civic education. The nation needs to understand where this is an issue.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is need to have everything driven with people who have expertise in getting to deal with it. And like there's so many moving parts where everything can be nipped in the bud, punish whoever is responsible for what they're doing right now. And if you look at the 100 million that was spent, or rather, I don't know whether it was spent
even
or
know.
not, because
Like,
I
it's not
haven't
counted
really
as
looked at
it.
it.
Yeah.
It
It was
was.
Lesos,
And
water bottles.
yeah, and one of the things that there was the lesos, the water bottles, the umbrellas, the
bottles.
tents. When Jerry was speaking about what she saw, as in it really shocked me that the spending of it was put up a tent in remote areas where women can come sit and talk, and then in the evening you go back. So what kind of solution?
Was there a solution?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you see how they look
Would
at it,
come
like
out of
women
there.
to sit and talk.
Exactly.
As if
As if they're the ones who are killing each
yeah,
other.
stop walking into
As
that
in-
punch. When you
Yeah.
see the punch, run. Right? Like,
Duck.
what are you saying?
Yeah.
Exactly.
So there's a lot that needs to be done, and it needs to be driven by experts. Like when you spoke about the women rep position, how strong it is and how it could be used, and the fact that it's not being used because people are not being shown how powerful or how powerful we are, and how we could simply sign a petition and have experts drive the narrative and the conversation so that we actually bring the numbers down to zero, because that is the intent.
Yeah.
A lot needs to be done.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why that gender CS, we're going to be watching you with a microscope.
My
because
guy.
Truly.
you
One
got
wrong
the
not in
job
a
in
bad
the
way.
end, huh?
You
Shortly
don't
thereafter.
understand the particular issue. And the worst part is the thing is gender, which
Yeah.
then begs the question. There's a politician from Meru, I think, Oembu. It's called Macarena. Macarena said he's going to run for the seat of women rep. He's petitioning and he wants to run. Right?
Really?
Yeah.
And I want to ask, is he wrong to want to go for that seat?
Why not?
Can a man be able to provide, the services that women need? Can he be able to lobby more? Would it bother you that it's not a woman who's lobbying? If he can be able to present to you the issues and say, I'm going to do this, because it's not like we're giving you the role to go and guess work it at every morning. I'm just going to do my best and let God do the rest. No, girl, you got to tell us what it is that you're going to do for us and then stick to
Action
the plan.
plan.
Right?
Yeah.
So if he gives us an action plan and he delivers, right?
I would definitely not be
And
mad
then
at that for
Yeah.
sure.
Gender CS, does it have to be a babe?
That's the thing. That's the thing.
Right?
I
Yeah.
agree. No, I agree. Because
Yeah.
the ones who are already there are saying nothing except when it comes to defending. Let's not get into that
I'm not
video.
mad. I'm not mad at it being a babe,
Yeah.
but I am asking the questions
Yeah.
that does it have to be a woman,
Yeah.
right? And because at the end of the day, we're talking about heavy issues here
Yeah.
that not only affect women, they also affect men.
Men, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and even men go through GBV,
Yeah.
right? And they also need protection. So they all fall under this bracket.
Yeah.
So we need somebody who's serious on that thing and is going to just jump into action. Yeah.
Plain and simple.
Yeah. I feel like today's is one of those where there's no answer. There's no conclusion.
So we are still working on
I
it
know.
clearly. Yeah.
And because production, I can see them over here looking at me like,
Wrap it up. Wrap it up.
I think I'll end this conversation here. The aim is to start a conversation in your sitting room, in
Yes.
your office, in your space where you show up every day, and ask the right questions. Even if you don't have answers, brainstorm around each other and let's see, because we can drive this. Again, this is our country. This helplessness that we have been brought to believe, ni ya wengine, and once they're done is when we'll come. And I would hope that Kenyans can grow out of that narrative. And it just comes from empowering ourselves. Information is power. Community is power. If you have in your community somebody who's running rogue, check them. Sit down together. So we used to have barazas and community meetings. What happened, Okay, no, also in Nairobi it's tricky. Neighborhood watch.
Yeah,
In the
Nyumba
store.
Kumi.
Yeah, exactly.
We still
Nyumba
have
Kumi,
those
exactly.
options,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So let's
true.
hold each other into account, but then also start conversations and then let's see if we can get action from that.
Definitely.
Yeah. Any
Yeah.
parting shots before we close?
Yeah, I saw a really powerful placard during the protest, the End Femicide one. I can't quote it word for word, but it said something like, "You can't fix a bleeding society by putting band-aids on the victims. You fix it by stopping the cutting."
Yes. Yeah.
Facts. I
So-
agree.
That's powerful.
Yeah.
Right.
I like that. I think that's where we're going to end. I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
I think we can end there. It's been a
right.
great conversation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for joining me. Thank you.
Thank you for having
Hopefully
us.
to many
Thank you for
more.
having us.
Yes,
Too
and
many more, for
we
sure.
don't
This
take
is
it for
just the beginning.
granted that you saw it fit to have the conversation with us, and we appreciate, and we cannot wait to reciprocate.
Yes.
And just know it's gonna be wild
gonna
because
be
you got
wild.
answer. You got things you gotta answer to.
Answer.
Yeah,
I know.
you need
I'm
to
looking forward-
myth-bust
I'm
a couple of
I'm
things
looking forward
for-
to it. That's going to be so
our
much
audience.
fun. And to the audience who've stuck through to the end of this episode, whether you're watching or listening in, thank you so much for yet another one. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one.